My family called my wedding date bad timing, so I got married without them, and what happened next turned everything upside down. I'm a 30-year-old man, and I recently got engaged to my girlfriend, Emma, a 29-year-old woman. We've been together for 6 years, and when I proposed, it wasn't a surprise to anyone. Our family's new marriage was on the horizon, and everyone seemed happy for us. My parents congratulated us. My younger sister, Ava, a 26-year-old woman, was excited, and my older brother, Mark, a 34-year-old man, said he was looking forward to the big day. Everything seemed fine at first. Emma and I decided on our wedding date pretty quickly. It wasn't random. We picked the anniversary of the day we met. That date had always been special to us, and getting married on it just felt right. We locked it in, booked the venue, and started planning. At first, my family seemed on board. My mom asked about colors and themes, my dad joked about giving a legendary wedding speech, and Ava and Mark asked where we'd be having it. Nothing seemed off. Then, a few weeks later, my mom casually mentioned that the date might not work for everyone. At first, she was vague, but soon Ava made it clear that she had a conflicting vacation, and Mark mentioned his company retreat. The excuses kept piling up, each one making it seem like our wedding was an afterthought. I brushed it off, assuming it was nothing serious, until Ava made it very clear that she had a problem with it. She told me that our wedding was scheduled during the week of her annual girls' trip, something she and her friends had been doing for years. She acted like this was a life-or-death issue, saying it was bad timing and that she didn't want to choose between her trip and my wedding. Emma and I were confused. Our wedding date had been locked in for months. Ava's trip was something she and her friends could plan for any time. It wasn't a work obligation or a family emergency, it was a vacation. I told her she was, of course, invited to the wedding, but we weren't changing the date. That's when my mom started pushing. She told me that I should consider a compromise because Ava shouldn't have to miss something important to her. I pointed out that our wedding wasn't just important to us, it was one of the biggest days of our lives, but instead of backing off, my mom doubled down, acting like I was being difficult for not making accommodations. Then Mark chimed in. He said that my wedding fell on the same weekend as his company's big annual retreat. Apparently, it was something he attended every year for networking and team building. He wasn't outright demanding that we move the date, but he made it clear that he'd have a tough decision to make. At this point, it felt like my family was treating our wedding like an optional event, something they'd attend if it was convenient. My dad stayed mostly quiet but finally said, "A lot is going on that time of year," as if that somehow justified their attitudes. Emma was stunned. She'd always gotten along well with my family, and she never expected this level of resistance over something as simple as a wedding date. She asked me if my family had always been like this, choosing their own convenience over showing up for me. Looking back, I realized that they had a pattern of doing this. They always expected things to be planned around them. My mom came back with another compromise, suggesting we reschedule. She kept framing it as if we were being flexible, when in reality, we were the ones being told to move things around for everyone else. At this point, I'd had enough. I told them that the date was final. We weren't going to reschedule just because Ava wanted to sip cocktails on a beach or because Mark had a work event. We gave everyone plenty of notice, and they were welcome to attend if they wanted to, but we weren't going to change our plans to accommodate their schedules. Ava didn't take that well. She went on about how I was being selfish and how family should come first. I reminded her that it was my wedding, not a random family dinner. If she really wanted to be there, she could miss a vacation for once in her life. The situation started to spiral. A cousin of mine reached out, warning me that my family was talking about how unreasonable I was being. It was as if they had rewritten history. Suddenly, they weren't the ones who refused to prioritize my wedding. I was the one being difficult for expecting them to be there. Some people took my side, but others acted like I was causing unnecessary drama. Emma told me not to let it get to me, and she was right. We were happy with our decision, and we weren't going to let this nonsense ruin our excitement. Then I hit them with a final warning. The date was set. We weren't changing it. If they wanted to be there, great. If not, that was their choice, but I wasn't going to keep entertaining this argument. Instead of accepting that, Ava and my mom kept pushing. That's when I realized that this wasn't just about scheduling conflicts, this was about control. My family was used to me bending over backward for them, and they didn't like that I was standing my ground. Fine. If they didn't want to come, that was on them, but I wasn't about to beg them to be part of my wedding. Ava didn't let it go. A day after I made it clear the date wasn't changing, she started texting again. It wasn't an argument this time, just one guilt trip after another. She went on about how she had been looking forward to her annual trip for months, how she had already paid for everything, and how it wasn't fair that she had to choose between a vacation and her own brother's wedding. Every few hours, another message would pop up. She wasn't asking me to change the date anymore. She was acting like I had wronged her by not doing it. Then my mom started in. The messages weren't direct at first. They were subtle, almost casual, things like, "Family should always come first, and you'll understand when you have kids someday." But it didn't take long before she dropped the act and got to the real point. She thought I was being stubborn, and she was deeply disappointed that I was refusing to be flexible. Apparently, it wasn't just Ava who had an issue. She started mentioning other family members who were upset. No names, no specifics, just vague claims about how a lot of people feel like you don't care about your own family. Mark stopped responding entirely. No texts, no calls, nothing. Up until now, he hadn't been as vocal as Ava, but now it was obvious he had taken a side. I sent him a couple of messages about wedding planning, nothing about the drama, but got nothing in return. He had decided his work event mattered more, and that was that. Then my dad finally spoke up. I hoped he would back me up, but instead, he hesitated before saying that he and my mom were reconsidering attending. Instead of making a firm decision, he acted like skipping my wedding was simply an unfortunate byproduct of family tensions. He tried to soften it, saying something about how they didn't want there to be tension on our wedding day. But the message was clear. They didn't like that I wasn't giving in, and they were thinking about boycotting their own son's wedding over it. Emma's parents, on the other hand, couldn't believe what was happening. They had been watching this unfold, and when they heard that my parents might skip the wedding, they were done being polite about it. They reassured us over and over that we weren't in the wrong and made it clear that no matter what my family did, they would be there, fully supporting us. At that point, Emma and I decided we weren't going to wait around for my family to approve of our choices. The wedding was still happening, and we were going to enjoy planning it. We started finalizing details, booking things, and making it a day we would be excited about, regardless of who decided to show up. That's when the family started splitting into teams. Some of my cousins, aunts, and uncles reached out, either congratulating us or letting me know they'd be there. But others were clearly siding with my parents and Ava. I heard through the grapevine that my mom and Ava had been complaining to everyone about how unfair I was being. The way they told it, I was the one making things difficult by refusing to compromise. Then the Facebook post happened. My mom never called me out directly, but it was obvious who it was about. A long, passive-aggressive post about how some people forget the meaning of family and how it's a shame when selfish choices drive loved ones apart. The comments were just as bad. A bunch of relatives chimed in, all vague but clearly agreeing with her. Emma didn't even blink. She just told me not to respond. She saw exactly what it was, an attempt to drag me into more drama, and she was right. If I engaged, it would just turn into a giant mess. Instead of getting sucked into it, I did what we had planned all along. We sent out the wedding invitations. We included my family, making it crystal clear that they were still welcome. That's when Ava and Mark made it official. Both of them declined. They didn't call, didn't explain, just sent in their RSVPs with a firm no. My parents, on the other hand, stayed vague. They didn't decline outright, but they didn't confirm either. They were still holding on to the idea that maybe I'd change my mind. Then a cousin gave me a heads up. My mom and Ava had made it clear they weren't happy about the wedding date, but I didn't expect them to start subtly discouraging family members from attending. They didn't outright demand a boycott, but their constant negativity was enough to make some relatives hesitant. That was it, my breaking point. I was done trying to please people who clearly didn't care about me. I wasn't going to keep begging my own family to show up. Emma and I sat down, looked at each other, and made a decision. We weren't wasting another second on them. The wedding was going to be amazing, whether my family was there or not. And when the honeymoon came, we were leaving without telling them a thing. The wedding day arrived. I woke up early, staring at the ceiling for a few moments before everything sank in. It was finally happening. After months of planning, after all the stress and drama, today was the day. Emma was already up, getting ready in another room with her bridesmaids. The house was buzzing with excitement. Her family had been up since dawn, making sure every little detail was perfect. Then my phone buzzed. A cousin had texted, "Just so you know, your parents, Ava and Mark, aren't coming." No explanation, no last-minute change of heart, just confirmation of what I already expected. I put my phone down and got dressed. The suit fit perfectly. Everything was in place. Outside, Emma's parents were making sure the cars arrived on time. Guests were being greeted, and music was playing softly in the background. It was clear they had stepped up. They weren't just treating this like any wedding, they were treating it like their son was getting married, not just their daughter. The ceremony was beautiful. The venue was packed, every seat filled, except for the empty ones meant for my parents, Ava, and Mark. I had prepared myself for it, but seeing those empty chairs was something else. Emma's dad walked her down the aisle. Her mom was already teary-eyed, and her brothers stood proudly beside her. My side of the family? A few cousins, some aunts and uncles who hadn't bought into my mom's nonsense, and my favorite aunt. That was the biggest surprise of the day. I hadn't expected her to come, but just as the ceremony was starting, she slipped into one of the seats. Later, she pulled me aside, shaking her head. I don't care what your mom says. You're my nephew. And I wasn't going to miss this. Emma and I exchanged vows. The officiant pronounced us husband and wife, and just like that, it was done. No more stress, no more waiting. As soon as we kissed, the whole crowd erupted in cheers. Any thoughts about my family disappeared in the noise of clapping, laughter, and excitement. Then came the reception. The moment we stepped inside, Emma's family made sure we were showered with love and attention. Toasts were made, glasses clinked, and the food was perfect. Every time I turned around, one of Emma's relatives was making sure we were happy, checking in, making the day feel special. If my family thought they could make this wedding feel empty by not showing up, they failed. Halfway through the night, someone handed me an envelope. It was from my parents. Inside was a check and a note. We hope you learn the value of family someday. I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket without saying a word. The check went straight into my jacket, unread. Emma caught on immediately. She squeezed my hand under the table and kept the conversation going like nothing had happened. We danced, laughed, and took photos. Nothing was going to ruin this night. Then the pictures and videos started spreading. Guests posted about how beautiful everything was. A few relatives even commented, saying they wished my parents had been there. An hour later, Ava made her feelings clear with a vague Instagram story. Some people don't value family traditions. It wasn't unexpected, but it was disappointing to see her double down instead of reflecting. No names, no direct call-out, but she didn't have to. The timing said it all. The next morning, I woke up to another message, this time a voicemail from my mom. It was long, too long. She wasn't yelling, but her voice had that tone, the one she used when she wanted to make sure I knew I was in the wrong. She went on about how the family was falling apart, how I had pushed them away, how Ava and Mark were heartbroken. She threw in phrases like, "After everything we've done for you, and I never thought my own son would do this." Then my dad sent a text, "I regret how things turned out," but when I asked if he had tried to convince Mom or Ava to reconsider, he dodged the question. His regret wasn't about what had happened. It was about the consequences of staying silent. Emma watched as I read it, then rolled her eyes. "We had a perfect wedding. Don't let them rewrite it." She was right. We weren't about to let the guilt trips drag us back in. Before anyone else could try to interfere, we packed our bags and left for our honeymoon without telling them where we were going. The honeymoon was perfect. No stress, no drama, just me and Emma, far away from everything. We had picked a beautiful resort, a place with white sand beaches, unlimited drinks, and the kind of peace that made it easy to forget the chaos leading up to the wedding. For the first few days, we kept our phones off. No messages, no calls, no distractions. But drama doesn't take a vacation. One morning, I turned my phone on and immediately saw a flood of missed calls, unread messages, and notifications from the family group chat. At first, I ignored them, but then Emma's phone lit up too. My mom, my sister, even Mark, all calling, all texting. Something had happened. I opened the group chat, and it was pure chaos. My mom was in full meltdown mode, calling out the family members who had attended the wedding. According to her, they had betrayed the family by showing up to support me and Emma. She wasn't just upset, they were being called out by name, accused of enabling disrespect and choosing sides. Aunt Linda, the one who had surprised me by coming, was the first target. My mom had sent a long, dramatic message about how, "I guess loyalty doesn't mean much these days, and some people are too easily swayed." Then came Ava, jumping in to back her up. She wasn't even trying to hide her bitterness. She was personally offended that anyone had dared to celebrate my wedding instead of thinking about the bigger picture. As if her vacation was the bigger picture. One of my cousins had enough. "So, let me get this straight. You skipped your own son's brother's wedding over a vacation and a work event, and now you're mad at the people who actually showed up? Make it make sense." Ava ignored that and went straight to playing the victim. A few minutes later, she posted a dramatic Instagram story, a black and white photo with some vague nonsense like, "Some people forget who's always been there for them, and loyalty isn't what it used to be." Meanwhile, Mark sent me a private message. He hadn't said much before, but now he admitted that he didn't think things would escalate like this. He made it sound like he wanted to be neutral but didn't know how. His excuse, "I don't want to get in the middle of it, too late for that." Then my mom made her next move. She switched tactics and went straight to Emma's phone. The message was long, guilt-trippy, and full of fake concern. According to her, I was tearing the family apart, and Emma needed to talk some sense into me before it was too late. Emma glanced at the message, sighed, and didn't even hesitate before replying, "We're on our honeymoon. We're not entertaining this drama." Then she put her phone down and went back to drinking her cocktail. Back in the group chat, people were still arguing. While my mom and Ava were fuming, more and more family members started pushing back. More pictures and videos from the wedding had been posted online, and it was obvious how happy the day had been, even without my parents, Ava, and Mark. Then Aunt Linda finally snapped, "You're embarrassing yourselves. You made your choices, now deal with them." That's when my dad stepped in, not publicly, of course. No, he sent me a quiet, half-hearted message, "I regret how things turned out." That was it. No real apology, no standing up to my mom or Ava, just another useless regret with zero action behind it. Then Ava found out about the honeymoon. Apparently, she had assumed we were still at home, probably dealing with wedding cleanup or whatever else she thought we'd be doing. But when she realized we were already on a plane, sipping drinks on a beach, without telling anyone, that set her off. The group chat blew up again. She was ranting about how, "Wow, guess we really mean nothing to you and you couldn't even tell your own family where you were going." That was it for me. I sent one final message, "You all made your choices. I made mine. Enjoy your week." Then I muted the chat. Coming back home after the honeymoon was like stepping into another world. While Emma and I had spent 2 weeks sipping cocktails on the beach, my family had spent that time spiraling. The second we landed and turned our phones back on, the notifications started rolling in. The first sign of trouble was my mom's Facebook meltdown. She had posted a long, emotional rant about how she never imagined her own child would turn their back on family, and how some people let outsiders ruin what should have been unbreakable bonds. She didn't name me directly, but anyone who knew the situation could tell exactly who she was talking about. The comments were filled with distant relatives chiming in, some agreeing, others clearly uncomfortable but trying to stay neutral. Ava wasn't far behind. She followed up with a sad selfie captioned, "Some bonds aren't as strong as you think." Again, no names, no direct callouts, but the message was obvious. She wanted sympathy, and of course, she got it. Her friends and a few family members flooded the comments with heart emojis and messages about how she deserved better. Then came the family division. A cousin reached out, letting me know that some relatives thought my parents and Ava were being unreasonable, while others simply wished things had played out differently. It wasn't an all-out war, but it was clear some people preferred avoiding conflict over acknowledging who was in the wrong. Apparently, to some people, avoiding conflict was more important than the actual wedding itself. Then my dad showed up. I hadn't heard much from him since the wedding, aside from his usual neutral regrets. Seeing him outside our house felt out of place. He wasn't the kind of man to take decisive action, but here he was, as if suddenly realizing the damage had gone too far. He wanted to talk. Inside, he hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. Eventually, he admitted that he hadn't agreed with what my mom and Ava had done, but he felt pressured to stay quiet. He talked about how they had been furious in the weeks leading up to the wedding, how they had made it clear that if he tried to push back, there would be consequences for him too. Emma sat quietly, listening, but I could already tell she wasn't buying it, and neither was I. At this point, it was clear my dad knew what was happening was wrong, but he had done nothing to stop it. Now, after everything had blown up, he wanted to play the helpless middleman. Emma didn't hold back. She reminded him that he let it happen. He stood by and watched while my mom and Ava spread lies, guilt-tripped family members, and boycotted their own son's wedding over something completely ridiculous. That's when I made my demand. If he really supported me, if he really regretted how things had played out, then he needed to say it out loud, publicly, and to my mother and Ava, not in some quiet, private conversation, not in a whisper that no one else would hear. He needed to stand up for me instead of just texting empty apologies. And just like that, he backed down. He mumbled something about how it's complicated and how he didn't want to make things worse. In other words, he was too afraid to take a stand. He was more comfortable being in the background, watching it all happen, than actually speaking up. That was all I needed to hear. After he left, Ava made her last move. She sent me a long text, completely unhinged, about how I was selfish and how I had ruined the family's unity. She went on and on about how I had humiliated her and how this is why no one respects you anymore. That was it. I was done. I blocked her. No more texts, no more passive-aggressive social media posts, no more of her nonsense. Gone. Not long after, Mark reached out. His message was simple: I should have done more. I'm sorry. He didn't excuse his silence, didn't try to justify it, just admitted he had failed to support me when he should have. At this point, I knew that some family members would never change. My mom and Ava were still completely convinced they had done nothing wrong. My dad was too much of a coward to challenge them, but Mark? He was starting to see it. Maybe not enough to stand up to them completely, but enough to realize he had been wrong. And that was enough for me to know that Emma and I were moving forward without them. Months passed after the wedding chaos, the social media meltdowns, and the failed guilt tripping. I assumed my family had finally accepted reality. I had moved on. Emma and I were happy, living our lives without the constant drama. Then, out of nowhere, the messages started. My mom sent a casual just checking in text, but when I didn't immediately respond, she escalated, reminding me that Ava's wedding was coming up, acting like I was the one who had to make amends despite everything they had done. Ava, who had been radio silent since I blocked her, suddenly unblocked me on social media. She didn't message, but she started liking old pictures, ones from years ago before everything fell apart. Emma noticed immediately. She didn't even need to ask. They want something, she said, and of course she was right. A few days later, one of my cousins let it slip. Ava was getting married. That was the real reason for the sudden friendliness. She wasn't reaching out because she missed me. She wasn't trying to fix things. She wanted me at her wedding. Then the invitation arrived. It wasn't personal, no message, no apology, just a standard wedding invitation addressed to me and Emma. Emma looked at it, then back at me. So, does she expect us to just pretend nothing happened? Apparently, that was exactly what they expected. My mom's text became overly sweet. Suddenly, she was all about family sticking together and fresh starts. She conveniently avoided every part of the wedding drama, acting like this was just another normal family event. Then Mark called. He wasn't dramatic about it, but the message was clear. They expected me to make things right by showing up. According to him, Ava and my mom believed that this was the perfect opportunity for us to move past everything. Ava must have felt the pressure to actually acknowledge me, because she finally messaged me directly for the first time in months. And of course, it wasn't an apology. It was her playing the bigger person. She told me she was willing to forgive me if I showed up. That was all I needed to see. I sent one simple response. I thought you didn't care about inconvenient wedding dates. Then I declined the invitation. Mom immediately started calling. I ignored the first few, then she left a voicemail, full of the same guilt-tripping nonsense as before. I was tearing the family apart, I was being petty. I was hurting Ava on the most important day of her life. I didn't respond. Days later, I started hearing from relatives. Word had spread. Ava was furious. She was telling people that I was immature and bitter for skipping her wedding. Apparently, she was shocked that I would hold a grudge over something so small. Emma just laughed when she heard that. Then she had a brilliant idea. Let's book a trip that weekend. And we did. A luxury resort, the works. We made sure to let a few cousins know, not in a petty way, just casually in conversation. The news reached Ava. That was when the calls and messages stopped. Ava and my mom must have realized that nothing they said was going to change my mind. No more fake nice texts. No more desperate attempts to manipulate me into going. Then my dad reached out. A simple message. I regret how things turned out. Same thing as before, the same useless regrets without any real action. I didn't respond. At that point, I had all the closure I needed. Ava's wedding came and went, and I didn't hear a word about it. No last-minute pleas, no final guilt trips. It was like they had finally accepted that I wasn't going to budge. Emma and I spent the weekend on a beach, completely unbothered, and that was the moment I realized we were finally free. Ava's wedding week arrived, and Emma and I couldn't have been more relaxed. We treated the weekend like any other, carefree and completely unbothered by the family drama that had consumed the last few months. Ava had done her best to manipulate the situation, but we had moved on. The weekend of the wedding came and went, and we spent it in total peace. We didn't get caught up in the stress of it all. I didn't even check my phone for any messages from my family, but it didn't take long for the fallout to hit. One of my cousins called me up, barely able to contain his laughter. Apparently, Ava had been spinning the missing brother narrative to the rest of the family. She was telling anyone who would listen that I had refused to support my own sister on her big day. My absence was somehow painted as the biggest betrayal, and she made it sound like I was the one ruining the family. It wasn't just Ava. A few days later, I opened my Facebook to see my mother's post. It was one of those vague, dramatic statuses, clearly directed at me. She lamented how some people just can't put the past behind them, and how family should come before petty grudges. It was a classic move, trying to guilt-trip me into submission. Mark texted me a last-minute plea, saying he wished things had been different and hoped I would reconsider attending Ava's wedding. For once he acknowledged that our family had handled things poorly, but even then, he stopped short of calling out their behavior directly. Emma, ever the voice of reason, reminded me that none of them cared about my wedding, none of them respected my boundaries, or supported me through the mess with Ava. She was right, I owed them nothing. Just when I thought things might calm down, Ava sent me a text, playing at being the bigger person. She said, "It would mean a lot if you came, but I understand if you're still holding a grudge." It was a fake olive branch, but I saw right through it. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I shot back, "You weren't willing to change your plans for my wedding, but I should drop everything for yours?" That didn't go over well. She flipped immediately. Within minutes, she accused me of being petty and obsessed with the past. I wasn't surprised. It was the same old Ava, always trying to flip the script when things didn't go her way. My mom wasn't done either. A few hours later, she called, sounding tearful and desperate. She claimed the family was falling apart because of me, how if I didn't make things right, things would never be the same. I wasn't buying it. I had heard this manipulation too many times. I told her bluntly, "Ava and the rest of you made your choices, and now I'm making mine." That was the last time I answered her calls. As for the wedding itself, I heard bits and pieces from the extended family. There was minor gossip about tension during the event, how Ava kept mentioning my absence and how unfair it was. But honestly, I didn't care. Ava had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. Then came Mark's message. It was a few days later, after the wedding had wrapped up. He told me the wedding had been a disaster because of all the drama. The tension was palpable, and people were whispering behind the scenes about how everything had been ruined by family feuds. But Ava had a final petty move. She posted an Instagram update, just as I expected. The caption was all about being grateful for the real family who showed up, and how she was cutting out toxic people from her life. The irony was lost on no one. She had cut me off for simply setting boundaries, but now she was pretending to be the picture of grace. Then, of course, my dad came through with a private confession. He admitted that Ava and Mom had taken things too far, but he still refused to take a public stand. He said he regretted how things turned out but was too afraid to speak up. His cowardice was infuriating. He had been silent throughout the entire thing, and now he was acting like he was caught in the middle. At this point, I was done. Emma and I weren't going to waste another second on this circus. We didn't need the drama in our lives. Instead, we booked ourselves a fancy dinner to celebrate the freedom we had found. Ava's wedding was over, and we were the ones who had come out on top. We didn't care about the chaos. We didn't care about the passive-aggressive posts. What mattered was that we were happy, and nothing they did could take that away. We toasted to our peace, to a life without the toxicity, to cutting off people who only brought drama and manipulation into our lives, and most importantly, to the future we were building without the weight of their negativity dragging us down. The family had lost its hold on us. It's been just over a year since Ava's wedding, and I've barely heard from my family in that time. I'm not surprised. The dust has settled, and while I've moved on, the ripples from the chaos are still being felt. Ava's marriage, for one, is falling apart faster than I ever imagined. Less than a year after the wedding, a cousin reached out to let me know that Ava and her new husband were fighting constantly. Apparently, it was over finances and conflicting life priorities, classic issues that come up when people rush into things. Ava was always about appearances, and I guess that perfect fairy tale wedding wasn't enough to hold everything together. I heard that Ava was devastated, but I didn't feel an ounce of sympathy. She'd spent months making it seem like I was the villain in her story. But now the narrative was shifting. Her marriage wasn't perfect, and no amount of social media filters could change that. My mom, as expected, was still pretending everything was fine, even if it wasn't. She never acknowledged my wedding, not even once. Not in private, not in public, not even a half-hearted comment on Facebook. She kept the silent treatment going strong, never posting any pictures or even mentioning it. She refused to recognize that the real reason I stepped away was because she and Ava chose to make it impossible for me to stay. I noticed something interesting, though. My dad had started liking some of the photos I posted of Emma and me, pictures of us traveling, going to events, just living our lives. At first, I thought maybe it was a fluke, but no, he was liking almost every picture, even commenting, "Good to see you happy." Yet, he never said anything publicly. He never once acknowledged our wedding. It was as if he was trying to show support, without actually standing by me in any meaningful way. Mark, who had stayed mostly neutral through everything, was starting to show signs of exhaustion. He'd reached out a few times, casually texting about random things, old family memories or mutual acquaintances. Then one day, he just came out with it. He admitted that the family's dysfunction had gotten to him. He told me that he couldn't keep up with the drama between Ava, Mom, and Dad anymore. He said it felt like he was always stuck in the middle, trying to play peacemaker while everyone else was making things worse, but Ava's behavior wasn't getting any better. It was like she couldn't handle being the one left out of everything. I saw a series of vague posts on her social media about outgrowing toxic people and realizing who never really cared. It wasn't subtle, and it didn't take a genius to figure out she was talking about me. But at this point, I wasn't even engaging with her nonsense anymore. Then the real twist came. Emma and I found out we were expecting. It was a huge moment for us, one we'd been hoping for and working towards. We kept it to ourselves at first, only sharing the news with a few supportive family members who had been there for us through the storm. But as much as we wanted to enjoy the moment, I should have known how my mom would react. She found out from a relative, not from me, and when she did, it triggered a meltdown. The first thing she did was text me saying, "I hope you don't punish your child the way you punished your family." She had the nerve to guilt-trip me for not telling her first, as though she was entitled to that information. Emma had absolutely had enough at that point. She blocked my mom and Ava from every platform we had, refusing to entertain any further drama. I didn't blame her. I had been done with them for a long time, but Emma had been trying to play nice for the sake of keeping the peace. That ship had sailed. Not long after, my dad sent me a message. He said he was worried about the family falling apart and asked if we could fix things before the baby arrived. It was the same old routine. He wanted me to just forgive and forget, to let it all go for the sake of family. But I wasn't falling for it anymore. I told him flat out, only positive, supportive people will be part of our child's life. No exceptions. I wasn't going to let Ava or Mom drag us down anymore. This was a new chapter for Emma and me, and I wasn't going to let them ruin it the way they ruined everything else. As for Mark, he was finally seeing the light. He started distancing himself more and more from Ava and Mom. He admitted that he could see how toxic the whole situation had become, and that he just didn't have the energy to keep up with the drama. I could tell he was torn, but he knew, deep down, that siding with Mom and Ava was only keeping the dysfunction alive. And then came the ultimate power move. Emma and I decided to throw a huge baby shower without inviting my immediate family. It wasn't petty or vengeful. It was just a simple, honest reflection of how we felt. We didn't need them to celebrate this milestone. We had friends, extended family, and a solid support system that actually cared. The shower was everything we wanted it to be, joyful, full of love, and stress-free. The people who mattered were there, and that's all that mattered. We didn't need Ava's approval or Mom's fake sympathy. The best part, they had no idea. They weren't even on the guest list, and that felt like the biggest win of all. We'd moved on, and we were going to keep moving forward together without the baggage. It's been over 2 years since Ava's wedding, and if there was ever any doubt about the choice I made to cut ties with my family, it's long gone. Ava's divorce was finalized last week, and the way it played out was almost poetic. Less than 2 years after the wedding she'd made such a spectacle of, Ava's marriage completely collapsed. I don't know all the details, but I've heard enough through the grapevine to know it was just a matter of time. She rushed into that marriage, just like she rushed into everything else, and the cracks started showing almost immediately. But here's the kicker. My mom, true to form, tried to spin the whole thing. Instead of letting Ava own the failure, she took to Facebook to make it all about how Ava had been misled by a terrible husband who took advantage of her good heart. She posted a whole message about how devastated she was for Ava, how unfair it all was, and how this was a lesson in trusting people. Of course, not a word about how Ava's actions contributed to the mess. My mom couldn't even bring herself to acknowledge her part in all of this. Then came Mark. He sent me a message late one night that was simple but powerful. It was the kind of message I'd been waiting for but didn't expect. It read, "You were right. Mom and Ava are toxic." That was it. No fluff, no excuses, just the blunt truth. I wasn't even angry. Mark had spent years walking the line between us and them, trying to keep the peace, but now he'd seen it too, and I could tell that he was finally fed up with all of it. I didn't reply right away. I knew Mark needed time to process, just like I did. A few days later, my mom hit me with her apology. She sent me a long-winded email, claiming she was sorry for how things had turned out and how hard this whole situation had been for her. But, as usual, it wasn't really an apology. It was more about how she was struggling with the fallout, how hard it was to lose her son, and how much she wished we could all just get along. She made sure to mention how much pain she'd been in over the entire situation, which, no surprise, didn't include acknowledging how much she contributed to the mess. Then the real kicker came. A cousin, who I still had some semblance of a relationship with, reached out and warned me about a family reunion my mom was planning. Apparently, Mom was trying to set up a surprise gathering to force me into making amends. She'd told everyone else that she was hoping for a miracle and that maybe, just maybe, this would bring the family back together. It was clear that she was hoping to put me on the spot and force me into being the bigger person. Emma had no patience for this, and I didn't blame her. She put her foot down hard and said, "Our child doesn't need to be around that negativity, no way." I agreed with her completely. We had come so far in building a peaceful life, and I wasn't going to let my mom or Ava drag us back into their toxic drama. There was no way in hell I was walking into some reunion designed to make me the villain. So, I did what I had to do. I officially blocked my mom, Ava, and anyone else in the family who still chose to take their side. It wasn't just on social media. I blocked them from everything. Texts, emails, everything. I wasn't going to play their games anymore. Then my dad sent me a final text. It was a lot like his other messages, full of regret but still not willing to stand by me publicly. He said, "I wish things had turned out differently, but I understand why you're done." That was it. A simple "I get it," but it felt more like a cop-out. He didn't apologize for the way he let my mom and Ava treat me, and he never took a public stand. He still wanted the peace, but at this point, I couldn't settle for that. Ava, of course, wasn't done. She sent me a direct message on Instagram asking if we could talk. She told me that she was ready to move on and wanted to find a way for us to be family again. But by this point, I was so over it. I didn't even open the message. I didn't need another round of the same old manipulation. She'd burned her bridges. The smear campaign started soon after. I started hearing from friends that Ava was telling people I had cut off the family for no reason. It wasn't even surprising at this point. She'd been painting me as the villain for so long that I wasn't shocked to hear she was still doing it behind my back. But I didn't care. I knew the truth, and anyone who was worth having in my life knew it too. Eventually, Mom and Ava stopped trying to reach out. It wasn't because they'd had some grand epiphany or were suddenly filled with regret. It was because they realized I wasn't going to cave. I wasn't going to let them pull me back into their world of manipulation and guilt. They stopped sending messages, stopped pretending to care, and honestly, that was the moment I truly felt free. As for Emma and me, we were doing better than ever. Our baby arrived, and it was everything we'd hoped for. We were surrounded by friends who truly cared about us, people who respected our boundaries and supported us without question. Our little one was surrounded by love, and I couldn't have asked for anything more. Mark, too, started drifting further away from Ava and Mom. Over time, he came to realize what I had known all along: the only way forward was without them. I'm not sure if he'll ever publicly stand up to them, but I know he sees what I've seen.